Well, good afternoon, everyone. It says that we're live, so let's get right into it. So, today we're going to be discussing the 20 Humphrey Bogart movies that I've watched so far and where I would put them among my favorite to least favorite. So, out of the 20 that I watched, which I enjoyed all of them too, I don't want anybody to get the impression that I'm saying any of these films aren't good. Because being honest, I thought they were all fantastic. In fact, I would say that all of them are better than most of the films that Hollywood is coming up with nowadays, even in comparison. Despite, them being a little more primitive, a lot of them being in black and white, the actors sell the performances better. There's more soul, more substance, more realism to the stories, to the way the actors present it. And I think a part of what makes Bogart such a great actor to watch on screen, that makes all of his performances so captivating, is the fact that he had stage training. He did act on stage before he got into films. So he really knows how to work the audience watching the film the same way an actor on stage would know how to work a crowd during a live performance. So, the 20 films I've seen so far, and we will go in order of least favorite to favorite. And I will explain why, what I liked about the film as we go along. But at number 20, we have Midnight, also known as Call It Murder, which it was changed to that title and re-released after Bogart became a much more successful actor. So I'm going to put each one in the chat as we go along. Now, interestingly enough, this starred an actress who only did a couple of movies and died very young mysteriously, named Sydney Fox, who had actually made her big screen debut in films in another Bogart movie did. Interestingly enough, they had worked together. But of course, Bogart didn't really have anything to do with it. In fact, the speculation leads that she might have been one of Carl Laemmle Jr.'s mistresses, and that might have had something to do with it. But nobody really knows. It was very mysterious how she died. But she also puts on a great performance in this film. In fact, she's pretty much one of the lead characters. This is why, as a matter of fact, it ranks at number 20 with me, is because Bogart got really the smallest role in this story. He really didn't get much screen time. He was kind of reduced to being the sort of thuggish, gangster boyfriend who was kind of just in the background, like window dressing, really. He didn't really get to stand out as a character, really show many dimensions of his acting ability. But, that was a thing that they were doing early in his career, was typecasting him as the boyfriends, the charming, sophisticated sort of gangster bad boy boyfriend types, right? That was how they saw him in the beginning. And that's the kind of role they gave him here. And you'll see that with a lot of his early films, which would go sort of near the bottom of the list. It's not so much that he didn't do good. In fact, in some cases, his performance made the film, which was not so great, pretty good because Bogart did good. Now, in this one, he got the littlest room to breathe, which is why it falls at number 20. But it is an interesting story. It's a good take on the influence of crime impacting the youth and making them turn to similar activities. That's what I kind of liked about it. And, a lot of the other actors really got to hog the spotlight for this film. So, yeah, that's why number 20, Midnight, also known as Call It Murder, falls in number 20. For number 19, this is actually his either first or second appearance in film. His first, where he actually got a substantial role, and it's called Up the River, who he acted with one of his lifelong friends and a really great actor of that time as well, Spencer Tracy. Now, Spencer Tracy actually got kind of a bigger role, but because his Bogart's character was the romantic lead of this story, he ends up getting put more predominantly on the posters for this movie. And another interesting fact about this movie, too, is that it's the only time, as good friends as Spencer Tracy and Bogart were, the fact is, Spencer Tracy was actually one of the last people to see Bogart right before he died. Him, Katharine Hepburn, and, they went to visit him. Frank Sinatra was there, too. And Bogart said, like, goodbye, Spence, because he knew it was going to be the end. In fact, Spencer Tracy was so shook up, they asked him to do the eulogy, and he just couldn't do it. So, another one of Bogey's good friends and drinking buddies, who was a director for many films on this list, John Huston, ended up delivering what was a very great eulogy. And I've actually heard it because there's recordings of it that they used in the new Bogart documentary, A Life in Flashes, which I could definitely recommend to anybody who would like to know more about Bogart, because it was a very great documentary. And it's cool because a lot of what was written before Bogart died, his own words were used as narration points for the story of telling his life and how everything he went. Now, back to Up the River. This movie is a very, I'll put it this way, you could tell the difference in film quality from 1930 to 1932 and 1934, as you'll see with some of these earlier films. Like, there was a major step up. The imagery in 1930 for, sound films was still clicking a bit more. Like, it was a little off. The pictures were kind of skippy at certain points. But at the same time, this film actually is really good, as the story it tells is quite deep. Of course, train comes. There's trains in that movie. I hate that it had to come now when I'm trying to talk, because it might drown out some of what I'm saying, but hopefully you can all still hear me okay. But yeah, back to the story I was saying. It actually is a prison sort of story where Bogart's character, he kind of, he came up in a good privileged family, but he got sort of on the wrong side of the law, got into a fight when he was about to go to Hong Kong. His family thought he was still there. He was just sending letters as if he was from Hong Kong and pretending, right? But, when he gets out, he'll have a promising future towards him. But while he's there, he meets a fellow inmate girl, and they start to fall in love. She decides she's not gonna, go back to her scamming routine that she was a part of. Of course, the guy that was this big sort of scammy real estate person that was using her doesn't like that. And he, when Bogart gets out, he tries to hustle him like, oh, you took my girl from me, so I'm going to mess up your future, kind of thing. And Bogart writes to her. She manages to contact who Spencer Tracy's character was, his buddy inside, who's kind of a more roughneck criminal guy. He almost got, the electric chair in that. And he has a masterful scene where he steals the whole show, where he's talking about how he saw guys almost get executed and he knew it could have been him. And he's talking Bogart out of not going to kill the guy, because that very guy that was, the girl's scamming partner before is trying to rob Bogart's mom. So to protect his family, he gets a gun. He's about to go kill him. And Spencer Tracy talks him out of it. He's like, no, let us handle it. We're going back to prison because we illegally broke out, jumped on a train, snuck out during a talent show. We're probably going to get 30 days in the hole when we get back. But let us handle this. So they go, they recover, like, Bogart's mom's stolen goods, bring it back to Bogey. And they go back, and of course, there's a big prison baseball game, which they're the pitchers. And the warden he's still going to give him 30 days, but he decides, hey, we want to win this baseball game, and you guys are good players. So go play the baseball game, win it for us, and then you'll serve your 30 days in the hole. So actually, it's a really good movie, especially for its time. It's well thought out. It's very creative. It's a good story. The only thing that really weighs it down is it doesn't get to show how good Bogart's was, because once again, playing the stereotypical roles he was given in the 30s. but also the quality is not the greatest. But as far as the acting, the storyline is fantastic. So yeah, Up the River falls in at 19. Next, we have Bad Sister. Now, Bad Sister is actually a pretty damn good movie because the reason I say it's better than these other two I mentioned is better quality. That's why I say you'll notice that was 1932. In 2 years difference from Up the River, the film quality had improved incredibly. So, in this movie, which is Sidney Fox's debut, Call It Murder was actually 2 years later, but this was her first film screen appearance, and it was also Betty Davis's first role. And they play sisters, and they're both very good. All the acting is this, and why I say like this part kind of shows more of what Bogart was capable of as an actor is because he is getting that stereotypical role of playing the sort of gangster con man boyfriend, but the way he's so slick, he could talk to the girl so romantically, but really he's a sleazy con man who's just trying to rob the town of their money, pretending to build up a factory, and he's a real shady character. You get to see like he's presenting himself very charming, but when you realize what his character's all about, like, oh, my name's Val Corliss, and he's like acting all charming, but you realize near the end, man, this guy was a sleazeball. Like he was horrible. He was a real con artist, and he conned everybody into thinking he was this charming guy, right? So I say that aspect gave his role in this movie a lot more depth. Like that's why I say this is overall a better movie. He's still playing like the same stereotypical kind of role almost, but because of the nature of his character, he gets to kind of, you know, leave a sort of mysterious quality about him that, as charming as he presents himself, he still leaves you with this uneasy feeling like, I don't know if I could trust this guy. Something about this guy just doesn't sit right with me. And you realize by the end of the movie why. When he cons um Sidney Fox and Betty Davis's father out of all his money as well as his partners in the town and runs off with it all. And of course, Sidney Fox had the doctor in love with her who was wealthy and well off, but she wanted somebody more dangerous and slick like Val Corliss, right? So she fell in love with him and kind of let him off. And then he basically ends up falling in love with Betty Davis's character. They get married, they're happy and everything. There's a lot of drama throughout this film. But then by the end, the undesirable fat rich guy who nobody wanted and he loved Sidney Fox's character, he actually gets his shot because she's left with no other options. Because her family suffered so much because of her mistake forging her father's signature to help out Val Corliss because she was in love. That the only way she could really balance out the scales is by marrying this fat, ugly, sort of undesirable guy because he's wealthy. So it'll, help regain the family's fortune in a sense. So yeah, there's all these elements of drama, but like I say, Bogart playing like the slick con man who's really romantic and charming, but he leaves you feeling like a bit uneasy. I don't know if I could trust this guy. That's what really makes it quite a great performance. And I would say if it weren't for, the performances of course, Bogart and Sidney Fox does a great job, and then Betty Davis too, this movie might not be as good, right? But it's because they all put on such great performances that I have to sit there and reevaluate it and think, you know what? This movie is pretty damn good because of their performances. Like, I can't get that one line. What's your name? Val Corliss. Every time I think of that, I'm like, oh man, Val Corliss, the real con man. And Bogey plays him good. So, all right. So, moving on to number 17. Another one of Bogey's early films where he actually got one of the lead roles in this. Him and the actress, hold on, let me look it up just so I don't get it wrong. But Love Affair is what this movie is called, right? It was 1932. So this was the same year he made Bad Sister. And Bogey was the kind of actor that he would honestly make 7 movies in 1 year sometimes. It was crazy. So Dorothy McHale is the lead actress in this, and Humphrey Bogart is playing, you know, her male love interest. But see, what's interesting about him is his character goes through, like, obviously there's the romance side of the story, and it's a deep, kind of nice, beautiful romance. And there's some funny points about flying planes and stuff like that. He basically plays like almost a fearless pilot who is also sort of a mechanical genius who has an idea to build these engines that are more conservative of fuel, more cost effective, strong, more stronger, like as far as like the manufacturing and stuff. So there's all these points of the movie, and then there's this drama with Bogart's sister's character because she's basically trying to use the man to capitalize and get him to marry her who has all this money, and that man is actually in love with Bogart's love interest and trying to win her over. But the more time goes on, she realizes that the whole time this rich guy was basically footing the bill and not telling her, making it seem like he was investing the money for her, but they had no money. He was paying for it all. So she kind of is heartbroken and deceived by that because he was just like leading her along, making her think she was well off, and she wasn't. So once she discovers that, she realizes like money really wasn't that important after all because Bogart saw her for who she truly was and didn't really seem to care. And then once Bogart finds out, like, his sister was playing him, trying to take advantage of him, um, that she was actually sort of dealing with a con man who was leading her on, promising her dreams of being a big star in the theater and all this. Basically goes, beats that guy up. One of Bogart's early badass moments in movies, which was pretty epic. And he just kind of sets everything straight at the end. And that's why I thought, like, you know what? That movie would have been pretty bland and boring, but Bogart just sold that performance. Like, him and Dorothy McHale held the weight of that film entirely by themselves. Nobody else really put on that memorable of an appearance other than like the sleazy con man boyfriend of the sister, and then that one rich guy. Yeah, I kind of could see how he was just, the major like business mogul, but he wasn't really like likable or memorable. So that's why I say what I remember most about the movie is how cool Bogart was and all the different range of emotions he displays without his performance. And Dorothy McHale too, because in the beginning she thinks she's rich, she's got it all. She finds out she doesn't. She realizes money doesn't really matter. At first she's tempted to marry into the money to maintain that lifestyle, but she realizes that that man wasn't very honest with her who was footing the bills because the whole time he was messing around with Bogart's sister, right? So she realizes Bogart was really the one for her. So, yeah, overall, that's why Love Affair falls in at 17. Now, number 16, hold on. Let me actually type the last couple into the chat just for anybody who's watching. That way we can catch up, right? Okay, Bad Sister and 17, Love Affair. That way, anybody who tunes in later, you'll be able to read the comments, hopefully, and see like what the titles were of these, if any of them sounded interesting and you want to check them out. So, yeah, number 16 is Dead End, which Bogart really had a minor role you would have expected based on the positioning of his character in the story. He's kind of just that random outsider who's on the run from the law. He's had plastic surgery to like change his face, and he's a gangster. But like, he goes back to see his mom, reunite with the girl. The girl's been messing around. She don't want him no more. She's not loyal. She won't run away with him. The mother wants nothing to do with him, even though he offers her money and he apologizes for the hard times. So, as much as he's a gangster, he's got heart, and everybody just shits on him. And you could see why he's so bitter and angry. And the whole time, like, he's going through this like series of emotions. He shows like, even a gangster still could have human nature. He could still have feelings. He could still be upset about things. And Bogart really brings the realism of that to the screen in this story. And that's what I really, really loved about this movie. Like, the rest really wasn't that interesting for me. It's about like, a bunch of mischief kids. One steals, one gets in a fight. That's what the most story is. But like, Bogart's kind of in the backdrop, like, this is the neighborhood they live into, the dead end street, the corner where all the crime happens, right? And that's really the central focus of it. And Bogart's kind of like, this is what happens when bad kids in this neighborhood grow up. They become people like Bogart, right? And eventually he gets gunned down. He's trying to escape. That part's pretty epic and cool. I love that part. The rest of the story was kind of meh. Marta Torrin did do a very good job in that movie. And what's interesting is she was billed way above Bogart in this movie. But then when they did end up working together later on down the road in Sirocco, which is on this list later on, they actually were almost equals. It was basically Bogart, Lee J. Cobbs, and Marta Torrin were the stars. With a very good supporting cast, mind you. But yeah, that's the only reason this movie doesn't rank higher. Because what is good about this, though, it shows this was the second phase of Bogart's career when he started getting typecast as, oh, he's the bad gangster kind of guy. Because he had made that role very iconic and perfected it when he did another movie, which is on this list farther up, called The Petrified Forest. He was so good as that ruthless bad guy gangster that they were like, okay, let's just cast him as gangster characters, bad guys from then on. That was the second phase. He went from the kind of, rough, lovable, romantic interest guy to the gangster, the bad guy, the ruthless guy. So that's the second phase of his career, really. And it was the third phase that he really started to show Bogart could do it all. He could play any role and nail the part every time, hit it out of the park. So that's what made it great with this performance, is it was starting to show you that even as a gangster, Bogart could play a role with some real depth and show all the different emotions associated with that role. So far, we're 5 movies into the 20 I've seen, and you've got your list of 20 to 16. So now we will get on into 15. Action in the North Atlantic. Now, with this movie, it's actually a really good movie. The only reason I would say it doesn't rank higher with me is because as much as Bogart is considered the lead, there's so many actors and performances and so much going on with the story that he just doesn't get to hog the spotlight as like the great character actor he is. But in the scenes that he is in, the parts where you really get to see he is the big star of this movie because he's the most well-known actor among any of the cast. You get to really see diversity at this point. This is, like I say, the 40s, the third era of Bogart in his career. Now, there's so many other actors that so many scenes, kind of take the spot and kind of push Bogart to the background. But when he's in the lead, he delivers a phenomenal performance because he's the first mate on this cargo ship delivering supplies during World War II. They basically got to go make another run after their boat gets destroyed in the beginning of the movie by the Germans. And they're stranded on a raft for like 11 days until somebody rescues them. But, all those guys are tough. They got thick skin, so they decide they're going to go back. And this time, because of the dangers of the war, they're going to be in a convoy with several ships and have military personnel to help protect and guard them. Of course, as they're out in the middle of the North Atlantic. While Bogart's there too, he falls in love. He marries a woman, which seems so untypical of his character, but he really got swept off his feet because this girl could sing beautifully, and they just were a match made in heaven. And he keeps her picture with him to remind him of what he's got to live for, what he's got to fight for, and he enjoys the feeling of having that now. So there's a good depth to his character in this movie too. I will say that. But yeah, they're in the convoy. The Germans start attacking. They destroy many of the ships. They're kind of left on their own. They have to separate and avoid the convoy so that any surviving ships don't get wiped out. And also because the Germans are targeting a lot of the convoy that was around them. So they're kind of stranded on their own. And the same German submarine that sunk their ship the last time is after Bogart and the men again. And they're like avoiding planes to try to shoot them up from the deck. They basically got to turn off their engines to try and escape the German U-boat. They go through all this and they manage to take out the German U-boat in the end and the planes. A lot of casualties happen, people die, but Bogart then becomes captain and leads the ship to victory as they land there and reunite with the Allies. Now, the message of this movie is abundantly clear by the ending that they really were trying to encourage the war effort and the troops, like positive propaganda in the stories, like if Bogey could be the hero and save the day, so could you. So support your allies in our fight against, like, the Nazis and all that was going on. So that's evident by the end of the movie. But overall, it's still quite a great movie, and that's why I say, like, my only real gripe with it was I wish Bogart had got more screen time. But other than that, it is a really good movie. And that's why I think it falls in number 15. Still a good spot, especially because this is where you really get to see Bogart playing more depth in his characters, which is what I love. All right. So next we have Knock on Any Door, number 14. So with this one, great performance. I mean, this is where you get to see Bogart in sort of, we'll say, the fourth phase of his career, where he had really become the big movie star where he could do any role he wanted. This was one of the first films done by his own film production company, Santana Productions, which was unheard of for a Hollywood actor until Bogart did it, to have his own film production company, right? So, Knock on Any Door is a great story because Bogart gets to play a lawyer. And he, for a while, he was mostly taking like real estate jobs, but he owes a favor to this one kid because his wife, his current wife, he had met her when she was a social worker helping the family out. They had tried to get the boy's father out of jail. He had a heart attack while still inside because the other lawyers didn't do their jobs right and died. So the boy always was angry about that. He turned to a life of crime. He kind of blamed Bogey. Bogey felt bad, so he was always trying to help him, helping to reform him, offering him jobs, but he just couldn't make it stick. He falls in love. The girl gets pregnant. The boy basically says, "Oh, I don't want that. That'll make it too hard. We're already struggling to fight." So she gasses herself and dies with his child. That breaks his heart. Then he really goes over the edge, ends up shooting a cop. Now, he lies about it the whole movie to Bogey. Like, I know that's kind of spoilers, right? I don't want to give too much away, but like, the whole time Bogey's fighting for him, and I'm sure if you watch this movie, even if you know that now, you'll see it does seem like he's innocent the whole time. He is proclaiming his innocence with undefiant like resistance. Like, he really is trying to save his own ass because he knows they're gonna execute him. Like, they're gonna put him in the electric chair and kill him if he's guilty because he killed a cop. So Bogart, he is just delivering a masterpiece of a performance throughout this whole film. He has one of these most famous lines and scenes of his is when he's like, "There are pinpoints of time in every man's life that help shape and determine his destiny." And it's just great. It's epic. It's wonderful. So, and then near the end, even when he now knows that like the kid is guilty and, they changed the plea to guilty, he still, just for the sake that maybe they could get the kid off with a lighter sentence and not execute him, he says it's not the kid's fault. It's the society of our times. It's the crimes of the neighborhood. It's us as the people that force this judgment and don't cut anybody in this young man's life who went through these horrible things when he was still just a kid a break. It's all these things that shaped him. We all killed him. We all destroyed this poor kid's life. It's all of our faults. And the way he delivers this closing argument, Bogart's just stealing the show. Like, that's what makes the movie. He's just putting on such a great performance, and he was so good as this like loyal, good-hearted lawyer who's really wanting to do the right thing because of his own past regrets handling the situation, right? So that's why I say knock on any door. Oh, I I think I hold on. I'm gonna remove that and put it in the chat properly because I didn't write the title right. It's knock on any door, not knock any door. But yeah, that's why I say it's an incredible performance. And Bogart is like, he's the lead actor, yet the story does revolve around the young man and goes a lot into his backstory a lot, which is the only reason it doesn't rank higher for me. But still, all in all, I do consider it a really good film. And I think it's a very good commentary on, the influence crime can have on youth from a young age and whatnot, right? Sorry, I was just getting a message. Anyways, where was I? Um, right. Okay, so we're at 13 now. All right. So, Beat the Devil. Now, the reason this one is where it is, and it's considered a cult classic now, it's actually got a really great cast. Gina Lolo Brigida. I might be saying that wrong, but she's like an Italian actress and model. She's in it with Bogart. She plays his wife. There's I think her name is Jennifer Jones. Robert Morley's in it. Peter Lorre's in it. A lot of great like actors who have acted with Bogart before are in this movie. And what's great about it is Truman Capote wrote the script for this. Now, when I first seen this movie, I really didn't get it. I was really lost by it. In fact, if you would ask me when I first started this movies, this probably would have been at the bottom of the list. But it wasn't until like I watched the Bogart documentary and realized it was supposed to be a comedy, a dark an odd sort of downward slanted twist on humor kind of style comedy that I really understood like what the movie was and what makes it so great. Because at first, when I didn't know that it was a comedy, I was lost. Like trying to follow the story, it's such an odd, weird story. Like when you're looking at it as sort of like a crime action thriller or something, Bogart generally would do, you would be kind of thrown off by how the story kind of zigzags all over the place. But the whole point of that and what makes the movie work and makes it actually a masterpiece is the fact that it's a comedy. So when you look at it through the lens of a comedy, you actually get the jokes a lot more. And you realize, okay, this is so wild and crazy and weird because it's supposed to be that way. It's part of the comedic nature of the story. Nothing is supposed to go right in this story because everything, like, that's the humor of it. Everything goes wrong so that all the characters can, bitch, complain, and make jokes about it. And that's where the humor comes in as like it rounds it off perfectly. And once I actually understood that, that's why you notice it comes in at number 13 because it is underrated. Like it's a cult classic now. It was not perceived well at the time. It's another one of those movies that came out on Bogart Santana Productions, right? And he was not very happy about making this movie. They went to Italy. It cost a lot of money. He had sustained an injury, so he couldn't talk very well. Apparently, there's certain lines that because he wasn't talking perfectly clear, they had a voice actor basically redo some of his lines just to sync it up with the audio better. I honestly can't tell which parts those would be. they say it was actually Peter Sellers who did it. I've never found any truth to that. Like, I can't confirm if that's true, but that's what they say. It's sort of a rumor. But I'll put it this way. If Peter Sellers is really redubbing certain parts for Bogart, I honestly wouldn't be able to tell. And that would say, like, Peter Sellers did a bang on Bogart impression, because I could not spot any parts where it actually sounds like it's Peter Sellers talking and not Bogart himself. So I don't know how true that is, but that's what they say. They actually said that about another film too, which was one of Bogart's last. I haven't seen that one yet, but The Harder They Fall. They say they actually got a voice actor because he had cancer at the time. It was hard for him to voice, but never confirmed that either. I don't know where these rumors kind of stem from, because Bogart's voice is pretty iconic, and it's one of those instantly recognizable voices in the world of cinema. I could do a pretty good impression, but he still has a distinctness to the tone and the characteristics of when he talks that I don't know if I quite believe if people said they impersonated him. I always hear it as, oh, that's Bogey's voice. In fact, I try to parrot how he says things, tried to get the impersonation right. But it's hard to duplicate it perfectly on, because he just had that much of a distinct voice. Now, the movie is basically about, like, these shady characters. They're involved in sort of business investments with mining uranium and gold, and they're a part of criminal organizations, and they run across this couple that's going to Africa for a coffee plantation, and the one guy's involved in, like, sort of British authorities, and then they kill this other guy. So eventually that comes back to bite them in the butt when Scotland Yard starts sticking their nose in the business. And the whole time, there's lots of laughs. There's some really funny parts of Beat the Devil, which that's why I love it. It is hilarious at times. Very funny. So that leads us to number 12, which I really love this movie. And this is a movie of Bogart's that really didn't get that much praise or critical acclaim. But I think it will make sense why I loved it, maybe more than other people might have. See, anybody who follows this channel, anybody who's a fan of me, I'm sure you obviously know I love Japanese culture, right? So knowing that, you could understand why a movie where Bogart's character goes to Japan would be like the best of both worlds, the perfect combination to be. Like, that's the perfect setting. I'm like, yeah, Bogart, Humphrey Bogart, my favorite actor, in Japan, being badass, doing judo throws, talking in Japanese, trying to win back his love, dealing with corrupt Japanese, like, secret policemen, and the government's trying to weasel him, and all these things. Like, I was like, man, this movie is great. I could understand why some people didn't really care for it. But me personally, I actually loved it. Like, Bogart in Japan, that was just the coolest thing. When he's having the judo match with his old friend from back in the days, um, when he's speaking in Japanese, and he seems like he speaks good Japanese in that movie. Like, his pronunciation is very accurate, which I thought was so cool. Him trying to win back his love, dealing with well, I'll put it this way: the main Japanese secret policeman, who was like, a war criminal before, is played by Sessue Hayakawa. And he was a legendary Japanese actor. Like, before the war, he was big in silent films. He was one of the first big Japanese acting stars in cinema. And that was his first return to films since after World War II. And it was actually the first film where they shot footage of Japan, because a lot of it was filmed on sets in America, but they did actually send a cameraman for exterior shots of Japan. And it was the first time in American cinema they had shots of Japan after World War II, which is incredible. I thought that was so cool. So I'm sure, based on, anybody who knows me, hearing me talk about it, you could understand why I just love this movie. And I mean, the way Bogart just grows in nobility and honor throughout the story, and he becomes like that Japanese American guy who's got to do what's right, and he, like, almost dies to save, like, the girl that he never knew was his daughter in the end. I thought that was so beautiful. He almost dies. He gets shot, but he saves her and he gets her out of there. And that whole thing, that was very touching. And I just thought, like, the way he had that look of shock when he finds out, like, the girl he left long ago who divorced him and ran off during the war, and he never saw her for 7 years, and she reveals to him, like, "Oh, this is my daughter," but it's kind of hinted, like, they don't come out and say it, but you could put the pieces together. That's Bogart's daughter, like his character's daughter, Joe, right? And I was like, oh, but the way he's so taken back, like, oh, I had a kid this whole time and I never knew. He plays that so well, and I wouldn't be surprised if he channeled the real emotion of what it was like when he had his first child, and Lauren Bacall told him she was pregnant, because he was scared to death to be a father. He didn't expect it. Just kind of came out of the blue, like, "Oh, I'm pregnant," she told him. He's like, "What?" And he's like, "Whoa, major bomb you're dropping on me." And like the look on his face, I feel like he tapped into that real life experience to like show that. And it's that scene alone speaks volumes for the whole movie, because I could feel the realism radiating off it. So yeah, that's why Tokyo Joe, Bogart in Japan, falls in at number 12. So what I was thinking of doing is, I was thinking, you know what? I might split this into two parts, just because we're already at 40 minutes in, and I don't want to rush the last you know 10 movies to try and fit it in an hour. But if I decide, you know what, we'll split it in two parts, do 10 parts each time, then at least, it'll give us time. But I don't know. We'll see how it goes. I was thinking about that, but I don't know. There's no real people in the chat. So maybe it is better just to go all out while we're here. Because, I mean, if there were people watching, I wouldn't want it to be too long. But since nobody's actually watching, anybody who does watch it later will have to watch the replay. I might as well finish it. But I am going to take a smoke break, just because, yeah, I've been talking about 12 movies for, uh, 8 movies now for 40 minutes. So, yeah, let me have a smoke break. No shame in it. Bogart smoked. In all his roles, he always smoked. That's why the term bogeys and don't Bogart the smoke or the blunt or whatever, that's where it all comes from. It comes from Humphrey Bogart, which is pretty cool. And he also drank a lot. That's why he died at cancer. He had cancer that spread to his spine. He had esophageal cancer. He died at 57. But he pretty much acted right until the year he died. Like, he did movies all the way up to 1956. He died in 1957. So Bogart was a champ. He was a real trooper. Anyways, I guess while I start to take a couple puffs of this, I'll put in number 11, which is Key Largo. All right, so Key Largo, Key Largo. Where do I start? All right, so this is actually one of 4 movies, and it was the last one that Bogart and his wife Lauren Bacall, who met on another movie later on in this list called The Have and Have Not. It was the last movie they worked together. Both do great jobs in this movie. Edward G. Robinson, who was also, sort of a gangster archetype in Hollywood at that time, he really steals the show and he puts on a great performance. Him as Johnny Rocco, aka Mr. Brown. He is he's ruthless. He's scary. And also there was the drunk in that. What was her name? Because she won Best Supporting Actress for her role in that movie. So let's see. She was Claire Trevor. And Lionel Barrymore was also in it as like basically he was cuz Bogart plays a major, and he was in the army. He goes to visit the father of one of the soldiers under him, who was a good friend of his. Pay visit to, it's basically the deceased soldier's father, and the deceased soldier's wife is living with the father to take care of him because he's older. He's in a wheelchair, right? So all those characters are great. And then the gangster Edward G. Robinson plays Johnny Rocco. He's got this sort of. She used to be a nightclub singer during the Prohibition, the gangster era, but she become an alcoholic and she's a real lush now, and she can't sing. And there's this one scene where he forces her to sing, but she's got like the shakes because she really needs a drink, right? So she sings horrible, and it's such a sad, like, cringe-worthy scene, but she does it so well, and she just burst into tears when he refuses to give her the drink after she sings it. And Bogart feels so bad. He goes up to the bar, he gets her a drink, and then the gangster's mad, like, "Hey, don't go against my wishes," and smacks him, right? But like Bogart, who pretty much plays a coward throughout this movie, despite being in the military, I think he was just playing it cool. And even Lauren Bacall's character was like, "You were supposed to be like my husband's superior officer. Where's your bravery now? How are you going to let this gangster push everybody around and act like that? Like, what's wrong with you?" But then in the end, he plays it cool when the drunk girl manages to get Johnny Rocco's gun away from him and give it to Bogey. He hides it because they need him. It's during like a hurricane on the Florida Keys, Key Largo, right? So they need Bogart, who knows how to use a boat, to take them back to Cuba. So they're thinking, oh man, once they get to Cuba, they're going to kill this poor major. And he's a coward, so he's not going to do anything about it. He's not going to stand up to him. They were trying to tell him, like, make a run for it because he refused to stand up and fight against them. But when they got enough out into the water, that's when the major Bogey revealed his true nature and takes them all out. He carefully plans it out. He basically makes it look like there's a problem with the engine, like they caught some kelp. The guy goes over to the side to fix it. Then he starts the engine, goes extra fast, knocks that guy off the boat. The other guy who's up on deck, he's seasick, so he doesn't even realize what's happened until Bogart shoots him. That guy manages to get a shot off at Bogey, who gets wounded, but then he hides on top of the boat, waits for the other guys to come out, and takes them all out one by one. He eventually takes the gangster who's like pleading for his life, Johnny Rocco, takes 3 shots to kill that guy and take him out because he's just that bad. It took 3 shots to gun him down. And then wounded, he manages to, send out an SOS through the radio, tell everybody back on Key Largo, Lauren Bacall, the father Lionel Barrymore, and everybody that he's alive and he's coming back. And you see him on the boat and he's driving back like, yeah, I killed all those gangsters. I'm the man. There's a bright future waiting for me when I get back to Key Largo now. And it's just great. So I would say, even though he really played the backseat to Edward G. Robinson, which in this case, that's not such a bad thing because it still makes it a great movie. But that's the only reason I put it at number 11, is because he did kind of play the background for a good chunk of the movie. When he had moments of greatness, he nailed it and killed his performance, though. It's not to say Bogey wasn't good. It's just Edward G. Robinson was hogging that camera. Like, he was just an animal in that movie. Like, I would say, if that is not Edward G. Robinson's best performance, it had to be up there. Like that, he hit that out of the park so hard, and he was such a great actor himself. it was tough for Bogey or anybody to compete with that. Like that was the role of a lifetime for Edward G. Robinson. So, but I mean, that's what makes it such a great movie overall is that you had such amazing talent all killing it. Like all these actors that I listed, they just delivered amazing performances, whether they were always in the spotlight or only there when necessary. They killed it. All of them. All right. So now we're at number 10, the halfway point, I guess. And this one is The Petrified Forest. Now, the reason I say this movie, that's why I had to put this at number 10 above all the others, because I just really love this one. This goes back to Bulky early in his career, but this is what shows like how great of an actor he was. Because here he is, he's in a movie with Leslie Howard, right? Leslie Howard was a bigger star than he was. He had been in Gone with the Wind, and he was a very big actor. But Leslie Howard and Bogart had acted in the stage play of The Petrified Forest for 137 shows. So when Hollywood wanted Leslie Howard to play Alan Squire in the movie, he said, "Okay, I'll do it, but only if Bogart can play Duke Mantee," because the studios actually wanted Edward G. Robinson for the part. And he's like, "No, I'm not doing it if Bogart doesn't get to play Duke Mantee." Because Leslie Howard actually had some star power at the time, they're like, okay, give him what he wants. He got them to give in. And Bogart was so grateful for that, that when he had his daughter, he named his daughter Leslie Howard Bogart in memory of him. And Leslie Howard died 6 years after that. Like, his career was cut a lot shorter than it could have been, which is very sad and unfortunate. But it happened because they thought his manager was Winston Churchill, and they shot him down during World War II, like on a civilian's plane. So he died for nothing, too. That's the tragedy. Now, about the movie, though, let me tell you about the movie. All right. So the movie is a great story because you have an artist who is struggling to find inspiration, his motivation for creativity. Everything is lost about him. He's just been kind of wandering around. He ends up in the middle of nowhere near this petrified forest at a place called Black Mesa Barbecue. And oddly enough, this is what's crazy. The guy who plays Uncle Henry in The Wizard of Oz plays the old drunk Grandpa Maple, who's hilarious in this movie. He's really good. But yeah, his granddaughter is Gabrielle Maple, and she's played by Betty Davis, who does a great job. They actually redid this for television in the 1950s, gave Bogart the role of Duke Mantee again, had Lauren Bacall play Gabrielle Maple, and had Henry Fonda play Alan Squire's character, since Leslie Howard was dead at that point, right? And that adaptation, considering it was the only time Bogart really did anything for television that much that wasn't like an interview, was a hell of a great performance. And it's free on YouTube if you ever want to check it out. I like that version too. But the original movie, for its graphic scenery, its gritty landscapes, the way Betty Davis nails her performance, the way Leslie Howard really gets into his character, and then Bogart. Bogart is not even one of the top billed stars in this movie, but he is so ruthless and scary as Duke Mantee. Like, he is the scariest gangster, but he's charming and kind of funny at moments. But he really leaves you like, I don't want to mess with this guy. Like, this guy will kill me. If somebody upsets this guy and triggers him, he might kill everybody there. He strikes you as that, and he's terrifying to watch, but he just puts on that performance so intensely. That's why he got typecast as a gangster. But it's not to say that that's the only role he could do. He was just such a good actor that when it came time for him to do something different, and he actually, was passionate about that role, and he could relate to Duke's character because Duke had some honorable qualities and traits about him, right? And that's why he nailed that. And that like made him a way bigger name in Hollywood. So that's the testament of the Petrified Forest, and why like I put it at number 10. As far as the story, It's honestly such a beautiful story. I'd say that's one of my favorite like stories of old Hollywood, like in both versions, like the TV version with Bogart, the original movie, like both. I really love that story. As an artist myself, there were certain things I could relate to, certain things that inspired me from that movie. I love the Petrified Forest. That's why I have to put it in number 10. Like I don't really want to give away too much of the details, but let me just say I freaking love the Petrified Forest. It is just so awesome. So that's why it's at number 10. All right. Now we're at number 9. All right. So 9 is Sirocco, which was made the same year as two other movies, including The African Queen, which is higher up on this list. This movie is some people criticized it for being similar to Casablanca, but Bogart as the shady arms dealer just steals the show. Like I saw this movie, I was like, "Yo, Bogart is so awesome in this role because he really makes you believe he's this shady arms dealer who's just out for himself." But then, he shows signs of being kind of romantic about wanting to get the girl, like that struggle of unrequited love and trying to win her off with like bracelets and money and getting her out of town. And then he gets cornered, he gets caught. He's got to basically help out the allies in the war with Syria. And then near the end, he finally decides, just for the hell of it, he likes to gamble. He's sort of a gambling man. He decides that he's going to do the right and honorable thing for the first time in his life. But then the Syrians get mad that, he was supposed to be neutral and just dealing with them, but to help the allies too now, it's like, okay, this guy's a problem. We can't trust him. He gets blown up with a grenade. And it's an epic ending, epic finish. And I was like, oh my God, Bogart just killed that movie. Like, I'll put it this way, the other actors were window dressing to Bogart in that movie because he just hogged the attention of the viewer the whole time. You're wondering, like, what is this guy? Is he a crook? Like, is he purely a crook? Is there any good to him? Like, you just want to know how deep the pit goes with this character. And by the end, like, you actually start to actually like him more. You have admiration. You see his sense of honor. And then it gets cut so short because of the exploding like climax of it all. I was like, oh man. But great, great movie. That's why I love Sirocco. And then number 8, In a Lonely Place. Now, with In a Lonely Place, this is a movie that wasn't actually perceived very well at the time, but now it's one like a lot of people go back and say it's one of Bogart's best performances. Now, me knowing that before I saw it, that's probably why I loved it right away. Because what I could say about In a Lonely Place is I understood what I was getting into going into it right from the beginning. It's a tough movie to market because there's so many different parts of the story. Like you have this struggling screenwriter who has an explosive temper, but he's also romantic. He's getting framed for a murder because he's a bit eccentric and excited about murder because that's, his passion. He's writing stuff, right? So they just think, is he really crazy and extreme? Like with his writing, is that all it is? Or did he really kill this person? And of course, it creates tension in his romantic love interest, who he really loves. There's all these other issues going on with his manager, his old buddy from the army who like recognizes he's probably just affected by the PTSD of serving overseas and all these things, right? So there's all these different aspects to the story that make it very complex. But Bogart just delivers an outstanding performance. Like he is like a ruthless, don't you talk to me or act that way with me. Like I will mess you up kind of thing. But he's also funny and charming in several parts. Like there's so many aspects to his character that the whole time you're like, did he kill that girl? Did he not? I really like it's hard to tell. For a good chunk of the movie, you're really not sure. He's so hard to read that you're like, it would be a great twist if he did, because it doesn't seem like he did. but it seems like he's capable of doing it. But you don't really know if he really would go that far. So it's just it's like the ball of thread unwinding, and the more you see like how destructive and crazy it could be, the more you really start to believe maybe he did. Nah, he couldn't have, but maybe he did, right? So that's what keeps you on the edge of your seat, and then by the end, you're like, oh. But then everything falls apart with his romantic life and everything else that you're like, man, all you could do is like really sympathize with his character. It leaves you with the feeling in the pit of your stomach, like, man, that guy got screwed over because nobody trusted him. But then it makes you reflective as the viewer because you're like, did I really trust him though? Did anybody really trust him? And that's the unsettling thing. Like in a lonely place, it really gets you. It stirs with you. It like messes with your mind because you're like, man, I don't know, but maybe. I really don't know though. And that's what I loved about it. It's such a mysterious movie. And Bogart just kills that. And plus, it also sheds light on a lot of like Bogey's characteristics as a person. That's what the documentary explained is because they were labeling him a certain way as like he could be a mean kind of like ball busting, like, drunk at times, like, if he had something to, like, rip on you for, he would do it sometimes just to be a comedian when he was drunk, and he just didn't care, right? So, you kinda see aspects of that in this movie, which makes it really interesting, like, you get to see a lot of his natural characteristics, but he just puts on a great performance because it's so unlike any of the other movies he ever did. And that's what you'll notice. A common theme as we get further down the list to number one now. A lot of these movies are all very distinct roles, but that's what shows like how much Bogart had as far as range as an actor and what made him so incredible. So, okay. Next we get to number 7. Deadline USA. And this one is for free on YouTube as well. And this is one I would recommend to anybody who really wants to see like a good Bogart movie to see what Bogart is about because he plays a newspaper man. He's in charge of this big newspaper. The man who run it died. The heirs of it, the two daughters and the mother want to sell it, but they don't realize they're selling it to a paper that's going to basically put it out of circulation and just wipe out the competition, right? But while they're dealing with this, a mobster attacks one of the reporters trying to like look into his private life, right? And then Bogart just gets on this mission like I'm a newspaper man. I gotta solve this crime. Like we gotta stop these criminals and print about it because if we're gonna print the news, it's got to be for something good to make a good change in the world for the sense of nobility, so that readers know what's really going on in the world, not just to sell papers and that. And it's like this deep commitment. And then he's also going through this drama with his wife. He's been sort of separated from her from a while, working so much. But with the paper closing, he's trying to get back to her because he misses, the deep connection they had together. There's a scene where he's like really drunk and trying to be romantic with her, and he plays an amazing drunk in this movie because he is just hilarious. Like his dialogue in that is some of the funniest shit Bogart has ever said. Like it's incredible. And that's why like Deadline USA, it was well perceived in its time. But it's one of those movies that it's like if you want a really good Bogart movie, you can't go wrong with Deadline USA because he says some of the best, wittiest wisecracks ever in that movie. Like there's so much comedy in that if it weren't for the serious nature of like trying to bust the mobster and the paper closing and the drama with this relationship, there's a mix of all these things, which you would think they would be counterintuitive to work together, but they all blend together like this perfect marriage. And Bogart just being that badass newspaper man who's going to print the news whether people want it or not because it's the right thing to do. It's just incredible. Incredible performance. So that's number 7. And number 6, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre. Now, with this movie, this is actually one of the ones that he did with John Huston. And I love this movie because it's a great story of greed and, isolation, driving somebody, to the verge of insanity. um what it's like being out in the wilderness struggling to find gold. There's a really almost comical ironic ending to it all. The way it was actually one of the first movies where they went to film on location in another country because they went to Mexico to film it. John Huston, the director, was like, I insist we have to film it there, based on the book, so that it would have the realism of scenery. And Bogart was stressed doing this because he couldn't shave. He had to be this crazy, wild character who would be talking to himself and trying to steal all the gold the whole time, which Bogart nailed this performance. He really convinces you he is this guy and he's talking to himself. And there's like tigers and all this shit and burros and bandits and all this wild, crazy shit. And like he just kills his performance. But he had a boat race coming up, and he's like, John, okay, we're done. Let me go. I want to go because Bogart was a good sailor. He wanted to compete in the boat race. And John Huston grabbed him by the nose, and he was like, you're staying right here, Bogey. And it led to a fist fight. Like, they were buddies. They would drink, and then sometimes if they had a disagreement, they would beat each other up. But they'd be friends again. Like, Bogart would say things like, that John Huston, he's hard way Houston. He always got to do things the hard way. Like, if there was a nice, easy mountain to film, that's too simple. We need to go where it's harder to film, just to do things the hard way Houston, right? But at the same time, Bogart would also say, and this is because they were good friends, Houston would be able to get me to go places I wouldn't normally go for any other director, because they met when they did High Sierra, because John Huston wrote the script for that. And then Bogart was the star of John Huston's first directed movie, The Maltese Falcon, which is further on this list. And that's how they became good friends. In fact, John Huston actually had his first acting role in this movie as the rich American gentleman who's like giving Bogart money when he's bumming for money, and they're in like the Mexican town, before they meet with Walter Houston, who was actually John Huston's father. And he used to be a prospector, so he knows there's gold in certain places, and he's going to help these two men, get all this gold. Now, the irony of this movie that's so great is when the bandits kill Bogart and take the burros and all the stuff he had on him, they think the gold is sand because it hasn't been refined yet. So they're dumping it out so the burrows go way less to get the burrows quicker than that. And you see all the gold get poured into the dirt. You're like, no. And then by the time the other two men realize Bogart's dead and like Fred C. Dobbs is dead, and they go and they find where the gold was dumped, it's all been blown away because there's a big northern, as they call them, like north winds that blew all the gold away, so it's all gone. All that gold they spent almost a year mining, almost $50,000, and that, keep that in mind, that's back then. So that would be much more now. But $50,000 worth of gold each they had, that Fred C. Dobbs jacked from them, that got dumped into the dirt by the bandits, and it gets blown away. So they all just start laughing, like, because it's irony. Nobody's really going to get to enjoy that gold after all. That's what makes it funny. And just a terrific movie because you're really not expecting it to go where it goes, but everything about that movie just works. And Bogart, like I say, just seeing him, because when he's Fred C. Dobbs in the beginning, he's kind of more clean shaven, he's more normal. He's just struggling to get by. He's just had a hard time. People have been taking advantage of him. You can see he has a bit of a temper, but overall, he seems like, he's a good guy. He just wants to, get a better life for himself, right? But then you see like the gold, it starts to drive him crazy, man. He's talking to himself, he tries to kill one of the partners and run away with all the gold. He starts talking to himself. He's afraid of tigers and all this shit. I was like, oh my God. See, you see him become crazy throughout the movie. And that's what makes it like a masterpiece. So that's why that's at number 6, because oh my God, Bogart's performance alone is just incredible. And you notice that I get very descriptive with the performances the further we go down, because I'm like, he killed these performances in these movies. All right. So now we're at number 5. Almost there. To Have and Have Not, which was based on a book by Ernest Hemingway, and it was the first movie where Lauren Bacall and Bogart got to act together. It's where they met, where they fell in love, literally on screen. They fell in love with each other. The directors was like, amping Bogey up, like, this girl's gonna steal all your scenes. She's gonna like seem like she's the real star of the whole movie. She's gonna put you on the back burner. And Bogey's like, yeah, fat chance of that. But then when he saw her star quality, her presence, and when she's singing with Hoagie Carmichael, the legendary jazz pianist, composer, musician, he's playing, and she starts singing with him, and she's just totally stealing the show. And Bogart's like, oh shit. But Bogart puts on an incredible performance too. Like, I think he felt the pressure. Like, he's like, I can't be upstaged by this 19-year-old girl in my own movie where I'm the star. But Bogart delivers an incredible performance because there is a great character development as I'm the neutral fisherman. I don't want to get involved in this military stuff, but they're kind of dragging me into it. All right, I might as well do what's right. It's going to help the people I care about. Oh, they're messing with my old drunk buddy Eddie. Okay, I got to deal with them. He gets to the gun. He's like smacking people, threatening them. Like, you're going to write my past. We're leaving. We're getting the revolutionaries out of there. Like, he totally does a 180 from how he was as a character in the beginning. And just all the performances in that movie are stellar. But Bogart, like, obviously, he reminds you, especially by the end of the movie, he reminds you why he's the star. Because he kills it. When he snaps into action at the end and like proves he could be the brave, honorable captain and not just I'm neutral, I'm just fishing kind of thing. When you see the shift in that character development, it's brilliantly executed. And like I said, Lauren Bacall, for one of her first big movies as a 19-year-old actress, holds her holds her own so good that like Bogart's like, I really can't let this 19-year-old upstage me. But at the same time, that's probably why they fell in love, and all their romantic interactions as characters in the story. Well, I'll put it this way. She called him Steve as a nickname in that movie, and he called her Slim. And when they had their first child, they named him Stephen Humphrey Bogart. Steve, right? A piece of Steve would always be with her, even when Bogart left. So that's why I say you really get to see like their true love blossoming right on the screen. And it's a beautiful, wonderful thing. And that's why I had to put this in number 5 because I haven't seen the other 2 movies they did together, but I've seen Key Largo. I've seen this one. This, like I said, I had to put this in number 5 because this was just such an incredible movie. Like, Bogart's performance was electrifying. The chemistry he had with his soon-to-be wife was amazing. Everything about this movie was just 10 out of 10. It just bang on, and it was so great. And the only reason it's at 5 and not 4, 3, 2, or 1 is because just overall, I like the next couple movies more. But to get number 5, you gotta know it's fantastic. And same with all the ones I would say in top 10. These are all incredible performances from Bogart. So, okay. Now we are at the Maltese Falcon, where this is like the beginning of Bogart's third era in his career, where he started to, diversify his roles. Because in the beginning, first era, he was just mostly like the charming, kind of thuggish boyfriend type. And then the second one, he played like the mean, hardcore, I'll kill anybody who messes with me gangster types, which he was great as. But see, that's why, in a way, that actually helped him with the Maltese Falcon because he plays a private eye. He plays a detective. And the whole time he's trying to figure out what's going on with this girl, find out what happened to his partner. There's the whole mystery. There's a priceless falcon involved that's like worth millions, that's like made of rare jewels and all this. And it's such a great story. And Bogart is so good as this character. There's some great actors in this movie. Peter Lorre puts on a great performance. William Castle, who was very young there, he would go on to be in movies like House on Haunted Hill and Rosemary's Baby. Very young, one of his early appearances. He was very good in it. Well, Bogart just steals the show because he's sharp, he's quick with it, he's funny, he's clever, and you don't even fully grasp his real intention till right to the very end, and then he kind of just baffles you like, oh, this guy was playing it all out step by step to see who did what. Like a real detective. Like he didn't have all the answers. So he led everybody to the position where they had to spill their guts and reveal all the answers to me so he could get the whole story. And I was like, oh man, he played them all like a chess match. Like one move equals this to the point he had everybody on the board and checkmate by the end. Like it was so brilliantly thought out, like the story and everything, and the way Bogart plays that character as Sam Spade, the detective. You really believe like this is the stuff that dreams are made of. Like as he said, like it's just that's an electrifying, iconic performance that like that's why it's considered one of the greatest movies of all time. Bogart to this day is considered the greatest actor in American cinema because he's the only actor to have four films on the 100 greatest films of all time. Now, these four films, oddly enough, are The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, The Maltese Falcon, Casablanca, and The African Queen. Obviously, there's a reason The Maltese Falcon is on that list. Now, my number one isn't actually one of these movies. And when I explain why later, you'll probably understand. But you notice I've mentioned two of them now with The Treasure of the Sierra Madre and The Maltese Falcon. So you know that the other two are coming up because I've seen them and I can totally understand why they're considered, you know, all four of these are considered four of the 100 greatest movies ever made in history. And I could see it. So next we have Casablanca. And man, it's such a beautiful story with the wartime elements, the tale of lost love. Bogart playing this guy running a club. He's really like he's brokenhearted by his lost love. He gets drunk. He's really emotional. Sam's playing the tune that reminds him of his times in Paris with the woman he lost. She's there with another man. He's even more mad. The Nazis are trying to take over Casablanca and controlling the French at this point. There's all this stuff going around. And like eventually he realizes that the girl really did love him, but she had to leave to protect him, to protect the one that was her husband before, all these factors. But she's realized that she always loved him most and she's sorry and she's about to throw everything away. But Bogart knows that that's not good. It's not good for the world. It's not good for her. It wouldn't even be good for her or him to have her tag along with him anymore. So he's got to let her go. But he sort of makes peace with the fact that at least I know she truly, really did love me all along. And that's why, like, there's, the famous, iconic, like, dialogue where he's like, now I'm not one for being noble, but it ain't hard to see that the problems of three people don't amount to a hill of beans in this world. And then he holds her chin and she smiles at him. Now, here's looking at you, kid. Which he improvised, and he was going through hell making this movie. Like some of his real life bled into that performance because he was going through hell. He was dealing with his third wife at the time, who was drunk, alcoholic, schizophrenic, and she stabbed him, shot at him, like threw things at him. Like he went through hell, like dealing with that marriage, right? So like he really was that run down guy who's like, hell, I don't even want to be here. And nobody really expected Casablanca to be like the film classic of all time at the time. To Bogart, it was just another picture. But he nailed it. He nailed it so good that it became a classic. Like his realism in that, like, who cares anymore kind of thing. Like that works with the character of that, guy running a club in a war zone. lost the woman he loved, all hope for a brighter future, all these things. Like it, it feels so real because there was real shit that would tie into Bogart as a person and as this character. And that's why he nails his character as Rick. And then of course Dooley Wilson, who played he was in Stormy Weather, which was another big Hollywood musical. Him singing as time goes by, that's the classic. Everybody always says the line, "Play it again, Sam," but nobody actually says "play it again, Sam." It's a misconception. Sort of like a Mandela effect. It's always "play it once, Sam." That's what they actually say in the movie. But yeah, the combination of all that, as you could imagine, that's why Casablanca is my number three, because it's such a great movie. It's hard to just even describe like any more than what I've said that makes it great. Like it's one of those movies that I'm like, if you don't realize how good Casablanca is from all I've said so far, you'd have to see it to understand. But it's just a magical movie that every time you'd watch it, it would take you back into that time and place, and you would just feel like you're there drinking with Bogart, reminiscing on good and bad times. So yeah, that's why it's number three. Oh, shout outs to Abs up in here. Yo, glad my lunch break lined up with this live. Yeah. Thanks for tuning in. Um, we will conclude soon because we only got two more movies. But if you're curious to see like what other movies were mentioned earlier, definitely go back and rewatch the rest of this. I might do like at the end, I might do a quick recap of what all 20 movies were again, just in case you're interested. But yeah, if you wanted to hear like my thoughts and why I ranked them where I did, definitely go back and rewatch it after. But yeah, now we are at number two, The African Queen, which was the second Humphrey Bogart movie I ever saw. And it was the first and only time that Bogart actually won an Oscar in his whole career for his performance as Charlie Alna, the drunk, smoking riverboat captain who, he's sort of like, they say he's Canadian, but he seems more American than anything. Maybe it's just a misconception with his character. But what's great about his performance is they did film this in Africa. This was another movie he made with John Huston, same as The Maltese Falcon. And the performance he puts on is incredible because they got to go through really perilous, real danger. And this really was happening while they were filming it because they really did film it in Africa. Katharine Hepburn almost like got sick and died making this movie because she was drinking the water. There was, all the malaria and stuff that gets in that. She was deathly sick in certain scenes of that movie. You can even tell, like she's sweating. Her face looked shrunken in because she was really sick. The only reason Bogart, the director John Huston, didn't get as sick as she did is because they were constantly drinking scotch. They were drinking so much scotch that the flies bit them and dropped dead after. But that's what saved them from getting sick, right? But I mean, the fact that Bogart won an Oscar and his only Oscar for his performance in this movie, I think speaks volumes about why it's so good. The scenery, the way he plays this character when he's getting drunk, he's funny. When he's talking about life, he's funny. He does the animal calls. It's a very iconic, memorable scene. The way they show bravery to fight against the Germans out in the lake, and they make their own homemade torpedoes to ram into this giant German boat and everything. Like everything about this movie is just wonderful. It sets the stage. And it's a beautiful romance because you see two completely unlikely as a match sort of characters that through the circumstances, the difficult position they were put into, naturally start to see the good qualities of one another, and their romance blossoms and flourishes to the point that it really seems like real. And that's what makes it great, is because they both actually had a lot of admiration for each other. Bogart himself said when they asked, "Oh, who would you want to be your co-star?" "Oh, well, I've never worked with Katharine Hepburn. I think she would do a good job." And her in response, "Oh, he was such a gentleman, very polite. In fact, she was one of the last people that went to see him before he died." So that tells you they actually got along very great. And of course, um, Lauren Bacall, she got pregnant on this trip to Africa with their second child, but also she went there to kind of look after Bogey because he was getting up there. He was in his 50s at that point, and he also became good. She also became good friends with Katharine Hepburn as a result of this trip. Katharine Hepburn almost got killed by elephants when John Huston wanted to go hunting and she went with him. So all these crazy stories. And you could see that in the movie. The movie reflects the real life and the dangers of Africa and the dark continent and all this. And it's so masterfully executed. That's why they consider it one of the greatest movies of all time. And I have that saved on my computer. I love that movie. And I really do believe that's why Bogart won the Oscar for it. He was up against some big contenders that year. Keep in mind, Marlon Brando was in the running for that award for A Streetcar Named Desire, which is considered one of the greatest performances in film history, too. But Bogart snagged it. And I really believe it's because his performance in African Queen was just undisputable. He put on the best performance. Not even Brando could top him there. That performance was untouchable. And that's why they're like, Bogart's getting up there. He might never have another shot at actually winning this award again. So just in case, we're gonna give it to him because really, he earned it. He had been acting for 50 years at that point, doing incredible performances, got nominated a couple times, never won it. So it's about time he got it. And of course, Bogart, even though he was shy and he never like bragged about like, wanting it or talked about it, boasted anything like that, he was so touched when he actually won that at first he was like, his friend had joked with him, if you win, get up there and say, oh, it's about time, like be funny about it, right? But he didn't think he was going to really win, so he's just like, yeah, sure, I'll do that, right? But then when he actually won, it was like, well, I'm actually very surprised. So thanks to my co-star Katharine Hepburn, director John Huston, I really couldn't have done it without you. So it also shows like the good nature of how Bogart was as a person. Now for our number one. Da, 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 da. I'm sure a lot of people are probably wondering what it is. You might have an idea, but then again, you might be surprised that I put this at number one. And it's Sabrina. This was the first movie I saw with Humphrey Bogart, and that's why it's my personal favorite. It will always have a special place in my heart. I think Bogart is so great in this movie because it's so unlike all of his other roles. He plays a businessman who kind of leads a lonely, isolated life. He's always focusing on running his business. He's very smart, very practical. His brother's kind of a playboy, so he's got to pick up the slack for the image and reputation of his family. And of course, you have Sabrina, who is the chauffeur's daughter, and she's played by Audrey Hepburn. And of course, her performance is just, I'll put it this way, it's one of my favorite performances from her as an actress. And that really, like, wow, like she could hold her own against Bogart so incredibly. Like those two, it's like it's a scale in that movie. Their performances are both so incredible that it's constantly like, because they're just so on point, both of them. And it's a romantic comedy, so when it's funny, it's hilarious. The romance of the story seems really deep, and you could really feel for it. Like, you really get the sense, like, Bogart is playing this isolated businessman who has a heart that he's just too shy or afraid to show the rest of the world. And you really believe it coming from him because he had mastered his craft. Being older at that point, he had mastered his craft as an actor to the point he could really make you believe he was Linus Larrabee. He was this businessman, and he was so sophisticated and funny and practical. And then William Holden, as the Playboy brother, also does a great job. All the actors do. In fact, the character who played Sabrina's father, the chauffeur, actually won an award for Best Supporting Actor because his performance was great. He was hilarious, like very old fashioned. Oh, I don't want my daughter getting involved. everybody will just look at her as the chauffeur's daughter who got mixed up with this rich, sophisticated family, and she's using them for money, like that kind of guy. But that grouchy old pessimistic, oh, I don't want to worry about this kind of stress, like he knocked it out of the park too. And then, of course, like I say, Audrey did a phenomenal job. That's why she's considered like number three on the greatest actresses of all time. Katharine Hepburn, who we mentioned in the previous movies, she's number one. So it's like you could see the leading ladies, when Bogart had a leading lady and they were really good, they could match him. But if they didn't, they had to be window dressing. Now, that's why it's an interesting fact to say this. Like, now that we're at the conclusion, I can actually say that the three best actresses well, I'll say four. The four best actresses I would say that ever held their own, like as Bogart's love interest and did it the best, I would say are Audrey Hepburn, because she did a great job in Sabrina. Lauren Bacall, obviously, because there was real chemistry. That was his wife, right? So obviously, every time, and that's why they made four great movies together. I've only seen two, but seeing those two, I can already tell the other two were probably great too, because there's that real life imitating art aspect of it. Katharine Hepburn, she was just a natural. She was a legendary actress. And of course, so was Ingrid Bergman from Casablanca. So, you know what I mean? Actresses like that did a great job. I guess if I was going to put a fourth actress in there, I would actually say that Sydney Fox, especially because she died so young, she only got to make like 12 movies. One was Murders of Rue Morgue with Bela Lugosi, right? She seemed like such a promising actress, because that's what's interesting about one of the earlier movies I mentioned, like when she did Midnight and Bad Sister. She kind of was put more in the spotlight than Bogart, and she held it. She actually showed incredible potential as an actress. And that's why I think, it's sad that her career didn't get to flourish much more than that, because she actually was a real powerhouse. And especially like this was early in Bogart's career, so he didn't get like the best scripts or the best parts at that point. But if he had, I still think she could have held her own, which is very interesting to note. Like it's kind of one of those what ifs of great Hollywood golden era cinema, right? So here we go. I'm going to quickly recount and recap. And for anybody who watches this later, you will get the explanations why I rank it here. But from 20 to 1, my favorite Bogart movies of the 20 I've seen, because I've only seen 20. I hope to watch way more in the future, and then, maybe make further adjustments and judgments based on where I'm at that point. Once I've seen more with more experience, more knowledge, I can make a much greater assessment. But these are the 20 I've seen. So in this order, I would say Midnight, aka Call It Murder, at number 20, 19, Up the River, 18, Bad Sister, 17, Love Affair, 16, Dead End, 15, Action in the North Atlantic, 14, Knock on Any Door, 13, Beat the Devil, 12, Tokyo Joe, 11, Key Largo, 10, The Petrified Forest, 9, Sirocco, 8, In a Lonely Place, 7, Deadline USA, 6, The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, 5, To Have and Have Not, 4, The Maltese Falcon, 3, Casablanca, 2, The African Queen, and number 1, Sabrina. My throat's killing me, so that's all for today. But definitely, for anybody who tunes in later, or for Abs up in here, if you wanted to know my explanation of why I rank these there, I think it's well provided. And it's also good to note plenty of the movies on this list are actually free on YouTube. If not, you can rent them for anybody who's interested, except for The Have and Have Not. That one I had to rent on Amazon, but it was about the same price, and it was worth it because, well, that ended up number 5, so it was definitely worth renting. In fact, let's see. Sabrina used to be on YouTube for free. I actually downloaded that one. The African Queen, same. I think it still is. Casablanca, I rented. The Maltese Falcon, I rented. The Have and Have Not, I rented on Amazon because it's no longer on YouTube. The Treasure of the Sierra Madre, rented on YouTube. Deadline USA, that's free on here, though. Free on YouTube. Anybody could watch it. In a Lonely Place, I rented. Sirocco, I don't know if it still is, but it was free on here. The Petrified Forest, I rented. But the television version, which has Bogart in it too, from 1955 is free on YouTube, which is pretty good too. I mean, I'd still say definitely watch the original film, but the television version's not bad. Key Largo, rented. Tokyo Joe is free. Beat the Devil is free. Knock on Any Door is free. Action in the North Atlantic, free. Dead End, free. Love Affair, free. Bad Sister, free. Up the River, free. At Midnight, aka Call It Murder, free. So, plenty of them are free if any of you are interested in watching them. Of course, as you noticed, the ones higher up on the list are ones I had to rent. But I don't regret it. They were worth paying for. So, till next time, hope you enjoyed it, and peace out.